On a calm April evening in Seymour, Indiana, everything seemed perfectly ordinary. Hayden Howard, a 24-year-old mother, stood by the kitchen window, watching her son Noah play in the yard with their cherished English Mastiff puppy Jackson. The sun dipped toward the horizon, casting warm hues of pink and gold across the sky. Jackson, full of boundless energy, darted around the yard, prompting bursts of joyous laughter from Noah. It was a picture of serenity, one that no one could have guessed would soon be shattered by an impending nightmare. Hayden vividly recalled the day she first brought Jackson home. A small, clumsy puppy with gentle eyes and oversized paws. Noah had been overjoyed, his excitement immeasurable at finally having a loyal companion. From that moment on, they were inseparable, spending every waking moment together. Despite his rapidly growing size, Jackson remained ever gentle with Noah, as if instinctively aware of his role as both playmate and protector. That fateful evening, Hayden noticed something unusual on Jackson's fur when he returned from the yard. At first, she didn't pay much attention, thinking that dogs often bring back signs of their adventures. Probably got into some bushes again, she thought absent-mindedly, scratching Jackson behind his ear. But something made her take a closer look. Upon closer inspection, what she had taken for tangles or insect marks made her feel uneasy. Hayden turned on the overhead light and began carefully parting Jackson's thick fur. What she saw made her heart freeze. On the dog's skin were strange marks that looked like small, round wounds. Jackson, usually so energetic and playful, now lay still, letting his owner examine him. His big, brown eyes showed a special sadness, as if he was trying to tell her what had happened. Hayden spent a sleepless night, checking on the dog repeatedly, and the next morning, she called the veterinary clinic. Dr. Steve Sunbury, the local veterinarian, had a reputation as an experienced specialist, but even he wasn't prepared for what he found during Jackson's examination. Each wound he discovered, each metallic pellet he removed, made his expression grow darker. Hayden stood nearby, holding a frightened Noah close, who didn't understand why his best friend was now lying on a cold metal table. The story became more horrifying with each passing minute of the examination. 21 projectiles, 7 metal pellets. The number sounded like a terrifying sentence. More than 50 wounds on the dog's body told a story of monstrous cruelty. One bullet had narrowly missed Jackson's eye, another was lodged in his ear, and a third in his knee. Every extracted bullet added another chapter to the story of senseless violence. During the days Jackson stayed at the veterinary clinic, Noah would arrange his friend's toys in perfect order on the floor of his room every evening. A plush rabbit, a worn ball, and a favorite bone. Each item held memories of their happy days together. The boy would fall asleep hugging Jackson's old collar, which his mom had removed on the first day at the clinic. At night, Hayden often heard her son talking in his sleep, calling for his four-legged friend. In those moments, she would sit by his bed, stroke his head, and whisper that everything would be fine, though she couldn't hold back her tears. Every morning began with the same question. "Mom, are we going to see Jackson today?" The Seymour police responded immediately. Detective Sergeant C.J. Foster personally led the investigation. Marks on the trees in the Howard's yard told their own story. Someone had methodically, like at a shooting range, targeted the defenseless dog. The trajectory of the shots pointed to the neighbor's house. The nurses at the veterinary clinic grew to love the brave dog. They nicknamed him the Smiling Warrior. Even on the hardest days, Jackson wagged his tail whenever someone entered his room. One of the nurses, Sarah, brought him homemade cookies and read books to him during her lunch break. Tim Woodward, the Howard's neighbor, seemed like an ordinary man. No one could have guessed that such darkness was hidden behind the walls of his home. The scene uncovered during the search shocked even seasoned police officers. Besides the weapon used against Jackson, the house was filled with drugs and equipment for their use. The picture of the crime became clearer and more horrifying. Now, the animal abuser was undoubtedly facing a long prison sentence. Dr. Sunbury later admitted to Hayden that in 20 years of practice, he had never seen a dog with such a strong spirit. Each procedure to remove the bullets could have been excruciating, but Jackson lay still, as if understanding that they were trying to help him. Only occasionally, when the pain became unbearable, would he whimper softly, and the sound broke the hearts of the entire clinic staff. At the police station, Jackson's story left no one indifferent. Detective Foster stayed late every evening, double-checking the evidence. His partner joked that he was taking this case more seriously than some homicides. "Because this is attempted murder," Foster replied, looking at photos of Jackson's wounds. Neighboring children brought handmade cards wishing Jackson a speedy recovery. They hung them on the Howard's fence, creating a bright ribbon of support. The local bakery began selling dog-shaped cookies, donating part of the proceeds to Jackson's treatment. At Noah's school, he became a hero. His classmates, after hearing Jackson's story, organized a fundraiser for new toys for the dog. The teacher used the story in her lesson, talking about the importance of kindness and care for animals. For the first time, Noah felt that his family's little tragedy had brought so many people together. While the police gathered evidence and veterinarians fought for Jackson's health, little Noah never left his four-legged friend's side. He brought his favorite toys to the clinic, told Jack in fairy tales, and promised that they would play together again soon. This childlike faith in a better future gave strength to Hayden, who was torn between work, caring for her son, and constant visits to the clinic. One morning, when Hayden brought her son to visit Jackson, a small miracle happened. Instead of lying in his corner, the dog slowly stood up and, limping, walked toward the boy. Noah froze, afraid to move, and Jackson gently licked his hand, just as he always did to greet his little owner. The nurses discreetly wiped away tears as they watched the scene. Gradually, Jackson began to recover. The antibiotics were working, his wounds were healing, and the familiar mischievous sparkle returned to his eyes. But Hayden knew that some wounds weren't visible, the ones in the soul of her little family who had faced such senseless cruelty. Jackson's first walk after being discharged was an event for the entire street. Neighbors came out of their houses to greet the returning hero. Elderly Miss Thompson, who had previously been afraid of large dogs, brought a homemade pie and insisted that Hayden and Noah join her for tea. Jackson's story spread across Seymour and then throughout Indiana. People sent letters of support, toys for Noah, and dog treats for Jackson. The $500 reward for information seemed like a small amount compared to the pain this family had endured. Every scar on Jackson's body became a reminder not only of the pain he had suffered, but also of the incredible power of love. Whenever Noah worked on his homework, Jackson was always close by, resting his head on the boy's legs as if offering silent support. During storms, even though the rumbling thunder made him flinch, he never wavered in his duty to protect Noah, standing by him through every crash and rumble. Life gradually settled back into its usual rhythm, yet Hayden couldn't ignore the subtle changes in Jackson's behavior. Each night, before they went to bed, he would methodically check every room, as if ensuring their home was safe. He had also learned to recognize the sound of Hayden's car pulling into the driveway, always waiting at the door to greet her, his way of saying, "I'm here keeping watch." On warm, sunny days, Jackson would lounge on the porch for hours, his keen eyes following the birds and squirrels as they darted through the yard. Sometimes Noah would join him, the two of them sitting side by side in companionable silence, completely at ease in each other's presence. Watching them, Hayden often found herself reaching for her phone, capturing the quiet, fleeting moments that meant everything, the simple, unspoken love that made their world whole.